Okay.
Last year you asked about all kinds of interesting things.
Yeah, we can do the same. We can do the same thing today.
That would be boring, but maybe
Yeah,
some
I thought.
similarly interesting but different things.
Yeah, I thought since like we talked about your life and so many philosophical things,
Oh, yeah.
we can continue on that line, but we can talk about what happened since last year, how you look at the future. Yeah, I mean, so like from your point of view, like what do you think are the most important things that have happened since Confluence 2016?
I think obviously the advances in AI, technological advances have continued dramatically. Um, Generally, new experience technologies. So, voice and chat were happening about this time last year. They have become dramatically more popular. So, Alexa, Siri, this kind of thing. Uh, VR, AR technology has seen significant advance. The most important advances have been in AI. There have been some extraordinary applications of AI that have emerged since then, extraordinary examples of success of AI. AlphaGo, driverless trucks, the experiment that happened in Europe, all these things. So there have been breathtaking news stories about what AI has done in the last 12 months. And of course, the geopolitical situation, we could not have foreseen
Yeah.
in April last year that this is what things would be like in May of this year. So that has been another huge change. Brexit and the US elections, the whole climate. And so yeah, so lots of changes. So a lot of things have become more stark, more clear, uh, more severe. The What I have been saying for the last 3 years, that the automation, the job transformation of the workforce because of automation is something that has now become clear to everyone. It has become very, very visible, and the more that we go into the future, the more uh, clear it is that we have a massive skills gap. That the only way to overcome that is education. That more and more of our workforce is unprepared for skills of tomorrow, and that therefore we have to somehow collectively work on these things. So these are some of the, um, I would say, on the whole, um, you get a sense that people are a little bit less hopeful now than they were last year. But also at the same time, I see that as a technologist, as a business leader, I see that there is tremendous opportunities, tremendous reason to be hopeful for because of what technology has enabled.
And you mentioned AI. What do you think is the inflection point, or that really changes everything?
I think that if you look at AI technology, I find the whole thing to be somewhat surreal, because I studied AI as a graduate student. My PhD is in AI, and the head of my qualifying exam committee was John McCarthy, who was one of the fathers of AI. And since then, if I compare that time to now, in the last 20, 25 years, there is a dramatic difference. On the one hand, the techniques themselves have not really advanced so much. There have been some, um, you know, advances that we can call breakthroughs. For example, some of the neural network technologies, like there is a CNN technology, convolutional neural networks. There is some ideas around uh, bringing reinforcement learning together with deep learning. And deep learning is called deep learning because the neural networks are deep, they have many layers. And which in turn has happened because computers have become dramatically more powerful. So my own sense is that while the techniques have not advanced fundamentally so much, the computing has advanced so dramatically, and the amount of data available has advanced so dramatically that these techniques are very powerful now. And of course, there have been some advances in the techniques themselves as well. But generally, we have gone away from what used to be called neat AI, which is the AI where we model the world, where we do reasoning about the world, we represent knowledge about the world, towards the approaches where you use data to, you know, build neural networks and train neural networks and so on. So, uh, I think there are three conclusions that we can sort of reach about the state of AI. One is that there have been these remarkable breakthrough applications, examples, the AlphaGo example, and some of the examples that I talked about. Um, and it is very clear, I mean, in the OpenAI team, which is based here in San Francisco, they recently demonstrated they wrote a paper and they demonstrated a technique that they have built where they can teach a robot to make an omelette by watching a video of somebody making an omelette. So this is not teaching a robot to make an omelette, which itself is hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
But this is teaching a robot to make an omelette by watching videos of people making omelettes. So this is an extraordinary kind of an application. And so these things are happening. And as we speak, there is the second round of this AlphaGo versus human match going on. And again, when I looked, it was AlphaGo won, and this was one of the best players in the world. Did not win that first match. And yet, you know, the thing is that you find that idea that we feel offended somehow when a computer beats us in Go. But it is. You would not feel offended that a robot can pick up a 5,000-pound car and slam it into a vat of paint to paint the body,
Yeah.
and in 2 seconds pick it back up and put it back on the floor. No human can do that. It would be silly for us to compare ourselves to a robot. We made that robot. So why are we offended by it? It is something that we have invented, something that we have created that amplifies us. 40 people could not pick up that car and throw it into the vat of paint and bring it back out in 2 seconds. So it is like, why are you trying to compete with an airplane in how fast you can go from here to New York?
Exactly.
So why do we compete with AlphaGo
Yeah.
when it comes to playing Go? Why don't we instead celebrate the fact that we built AlphaGo? People built it. It did not fall from the skies. You know, somebody wrote the software. Why don't we all learn to write software like that? Instead of competing on silly abilities, let us focus on constructions that amplify us. So that is one. The second thing is that we are still early in the development of AI. People are going to build this AI. We have to train people to build this AI. And there is going to be far more advances that are possible in the time of AI. And we have opportunities to build AI systems. Millions of new opportunities will come in this area. And every time we think about technology displacing us, we think about it looking backwards, because this is all we know. Our world is shaped, our mind is shaped by what is in our past. So we tend to think about things as the way they have been, and so we think of all the jobs that will go away. But we don't think of all the jobs that will be created because new opportunities become available to us.
So how can we make sure that we learn from the past, but we don't get stuck in the past, and that we can really imagine a new future that we go into?
By education. The main thing is education, and by learning, by acquiring these skills. Unfortunately, it is true that while there are going to be huge opportunities, most people are not equipped to serve these opportunities. We are not teaching enough. So my wife runs our foundation here, and they are having their event right here on this floor. And that event is all about bringing computer science to everybody in a massive scale. So we need education, but we also need new kinds of education. We need new ways to learn. We need new ways to teach people new things. And I think that in our lifetimes, we will see AI technology reach a point where any problem that is repeatable, that is possible to precisely articulate, is going to become automated. Therefore, our frontier is problem finding. look at the world and see what is not there, what is missing from the world. What if we were to build it, would be cool, would be amazing, would bring value. And then let AI help us do that once we have identified that. I think of it that way. And so the Infosys journey is the same way. We want to go away from the mundane things that are now increasingly possible to do automatically. We want to do them automatically. And we want to instead go towards the innovative things that machines cannot do, where we can exercise our imagination and creativity and things like this. So this is how I see it.
And earlier you mentioned, the problem that is happening now because of various elections and the government climate. There's definitely a clash between governance and technology, between policymakers and technologists. How do you see that sort of play out, and what do we really need to do to make sure that both worlds communicate with each other? Because it's sometimes it seems like two different worlds.
I think just like technology is reshaping everything, technology should also reshape government for the better, more transparency, more agility. Some of the work has started in that area, .gov and so forth, the data.gov and other things. We need to make sure that policymakers are aware of technology, that policymakers are aware of the implications of technology and how rapidly it grows and so forth, so that the pace of defining and reshaping policies can keep up with the pace of technology. The governor of Indiana was here, and Eric Holcomb, and he talks about this idea of doing business at the speed of business. And he runs his government in that way, and it's very impressive. We were able to do the work that we did with Indiana within 3 months. It was unthinkable that we would make so much progress. I mean, we started in February, we did the agreement, we have already identified the space, we have already made the first offers to people. We have an agreement going with the university, with Purdue, and so it is astounding. So there are examples of government where the government can move very rapidly. If you look at the government in India, it's enabling a lot of transformational change around the use of digital identity, digital money, payments, enabling people at a massive scale to participate in the digital economy and things of this nature. So it is possible to do that, but we need more technology in government, not government against technology.
Yeah. And so how do you see technology really amplifying education and changing education? There's so many people who want to be part of the technology world, but there's a lot of art, there's science, and how can we really unleash creativity in all these different rubrics? And in a way, like technology, it's already happening. There's so much talent pouring in, and how can we really unleash potential of everyone, and where there's a lot of different intersections being combined?
So if you look at companies like Udacity or Coursera or edX or Pluralsight and companies like this, we work with them. Sebastian from Udacity will be here tomorrow. They have done the kind of the first wave of rethinking education, and it's very impressive. The Udacity idea of nano degrees or the MOOCs that Coursera has and other companies have. So they are bringing education to a much wider audience, much wider audience. But there are many more steps that we have to still take around rethinking education, around bringing people with low skills or reskilling people in these new areas. Some things that we have been experimenting with in our own training. Training is a huge part of what we do at Infosys, and are around things like experiential learning, so throwing people into the middle of a situation. What projects really are like. It doesn't help to teach people in the school based on, trivial or made-up examples from some artificial thing.
Yeah, it's really practical.
But you have to do real things with real data, real projects, real systems, real customers, and teach them in a safe manner what it is like to be in a real situation. Similar to the flight simulator, as a way that you can fly around the plane in a very photorealistic environment, and you temporarily your senses feel like you are flying the plane, but you are safe. You can, even if the plane crashes, it's okay. Um, Similarly, we need that kind of a thing. In Germany, there has been this whole idea of the practicum, the internship, apprenticeship, and this where you learn from the master. It's not very scalable, the traditional apprenticeship, but perhaps technology can help us scale that. Perhaps technology can help a great teacher. You know, we all know, remember the greatest teachers of our lives and how they teach us. And what if the great teachers were available to millions of students through the power of technology? Could we use technology to scale the teaching experience? Could we use AI to help scale the teacher and reach lots of people across space and time? So these are some of the things that will have to be done. My wife has this incredible statistic that she found. Last year, she was doing a speech for the Computer Science Teachers Association from the foundation, and she found that in the dark ages, 6% of the world's population knew how to read and write.
Mm.
And when the dark ages were going to the Middle Ages. Today, if you look at the world and if you look at computing as a new kind of literacy, 0.5% of the world's population can program a computer, 0.5%. So this is like 12 times worse than the dark ages. And so we are still in the dark ages when it comes to the digital world. I mean, it's incredible to me that we are not teaching children what their world of the future is going to be like. Everything, I mean, this plant is going to be a digitally controlled plant in a few years. There's no doubt about it, because this whole idea that some guy comes to water this twice a day at a fixed time is completely ridiculous. It is similar to our once a year health checks.
Yeah.
Why isn't this plant getting water when it needs the water? It is very, very easy to put a 50-cent sensor in there which can tell you that the plant is thirsty. And then you come and give it as much water as it needs. That is also possible to do automatically. So all this stuff is going to be digital and computing driven, and yet we are not teaching people computing.
So another topic, blockchain technology is really changing a lot of things. It's shifting the paradigm, bringing us into the digital age. What are your thoughts on decentralized and distributed systems and the impact it can have really to undermine a lot of existing old structures that we have to get rid of?
We have had decentralized and distributed systems for a long time. The internet is a classic example of a distributed, decentralized system. Nobody owns the internet.
But then on the internet today, you have players like Facebook and Google, the duopoly that
And those are applications that are on top of the internet. But if you look at the internet itself, there isn't any version of it. There isn't any owner of it. It has millions and millions of nodes, and yet nobody owns them. They come in and they go out. The internet has had every atom and every bit of the internet has replaced itself many times over without anybody controlling that centrally. And it's a great example of not the web, not the applications on the web, but the internet itself is an incredible example of software architecture. And J.C.R. Licklider, who wrote the memo that created the internet, he called it the intergalactic network at the time. And they designed it around this principle of complete federation, complete decentralization. And blockchain is an example of one of these decentralized technologies. It's a wonderful architecture. If you think about this, you realize that every large-scale system in the universe is a decentralized system.
Yeah. It's
so,
like it's this trend that's been happening in small ways.
Yeah.
But if you look back, 500 years ago we had kings, and now we're going more and more into decentralized systems,
Yeah.
which I think is very necessary. The problem I see is that existing governments and existing players in the status quo have no incentive to change these things, and so I think there will be
No, but the
a rough
opportunities-
patch.
What will happen is that opportunities come and great applications develop. So blockchain needs a currency on top of it for it to be effective. It is similar to the cloud technology, and so like an AWS or a public cloud, when it achieves a large scale, something similar to this will happen in the blockchain world, where a new kind of a decentralized trust service will emerge, which will achieve critical mass, and then everybody will suddenly realize that. And people right now, we are in a stage where people pay respect to blockchain, people pay tribute to it, they say it's a cool thing, it's something important. but it is not yet something that is people are very serious
Still
about.
early, yeah.
It's still early. So once, and my sense is that, and we do a lot of work in blockchain in our financial services and many other trust areas, in our clinical product and so forth. My sense is that when a service of a critical mass on top of blockchain arrives, then all of a sudden that will change everything. But it's probably 2-3 years out.
So then, when you look to the future, what are the big problems that you're really excited to solve, and how do you see Infosys, like playing a leading role in this?
I'm really excited to solve the education problem. I think that is the defining problem of our times, of creating a culture of making, culture of computing. That is at the heart of what we are doing at Infosys, obviously. And then the getting problem finding, innovating as a methodology or a process, as a technique, into the hands of millions and millions of people. See, when we think about this future of AI, we realize that in our lifetimes, AI technology will do things that we can automate. Anything that we can prescribe, that we can mechanically articulate, is going to be done automatically. So our frontier really is to identify the problems, to identify the innovations that need to be built. And that means that we all have to be entrepreneurs. We all have to be innovators. And people ask me, how can there be a billion innovators? And I say, why not? I mean, today we still think of innovation as something mystical, that, there was, an innovator and he came and he built something. Let us ask them why, how did you build it? And let us have a conference to bring 25 innovators and ask them, how do you do your thing? The reality is that you can teach innovation. We can teach our eyes. We are born with the ability to see what is there. We are not born with the ability to see what is not there. But we are born with a curiosity. If you ask any 4-year-old person, 4-year-old child, every one of them is curious. We have billions of curious children who are 4 years old. And yet, people say that how can you have a billion entrepreneurs? It's like, did you ever see a 4-year-old who was not curious?
It gets beaten out of these kids.
It gets beaten out of
when
them.
Like, education is really the biggest
Over the course
bottleneck.
of the schooling, it gets beaten out of the children, and we can reinsert that. So we have to create that culture of curiosity and entrepreneurship. And I think that is at the heart of what, in my view, what should be done.
So maybe one last question, like, when we go to, explore the stars, and, we're going to build a new civilization on Mars, or maybe even like some colony somewhere else on planet Earth, how would you reimagine society? And, like, what are the principles, that we should build, the new country on? Like, how do you see, like, what are the most important things?
I think that rather than the principles, the processes would have to be the ones that are redesigned. So for example, it would have to be based on this minimum viable, rapid iteration, real feedback from the ground up reality, and those kinds of things. If you look at the US democracy, and I know people, there have been a lot of criticism of it and a lot of, but if you just look at that as an institution, it is now more than 233 years old, something like that, right? 1776 is 24 plus 17 is 41. It's 241 years old. It's more than 241 years old. And yet, it has withstood so much change. It has withstood so many generations of change. So much dramatic transformation in society. When the Constitution was being written here in the US, there was a constitutional convention. And the extraordinary thing I found about it was that people came to that convention disagreeing. They left the convention disagreeing. And yet they produced something that is so amazing that it has withstood the test of 240 years of change. And every time it has become stronger. With every test, with every threat, it has become stronger. I just find that to be an incredible foundation on which to build something like that. We don't build IT systems like that. where differing points of view make the thing stronger. I think that is what the founders of the Constitution of the US were after, was that a system that was not a system based on agreement, but a system that was based on improvement, on progress, on where disagreement would improve the system. And I just find that to be an extraordinary set of principles on which to base something. You know, many of them were slave owners. They would have been horrified at the prospect that President Obama was president.
Mm.
And yet they created a system where President Obama was president.
Yeah.
And I just found that to be that would be a great starting point.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Great.
Wonderful.